Thank you guys very much for joining us today. We're doing our 2022 protest process webinar. It's part of our property owner webinar series. We are recording this, so at the end, we will be posting it on our website. Please give us a day or so to get it uploaded to the website, but we will record this and it will be available for review again on our website. If you have any questions, if you could please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. We'll go through the presentation, and at the end, we'll loop back around and answer as many questions as we can in the time that we have available for us. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So the protest process. The deadline for filing protest is May 16th of 2022. There's also an informal process, which is from April 18th through June 30th, and the ARB hearing, formal hearing process, which will continue throughout the summer of 2022. Most property owners have already received their notice of appraised value. That's sent every April to property owners whose values have increased at least $1,000 in the last year. On that notice of appraised value, you're going to see three different value determinations on that. You will see a market value, which is what your property would sell for as of January 1st. You'll also see an assessed value, which is the reduced value of your property after a homestead limitation calculation, and a taxable value, which is the value after exemptions, and that's the value that is used to calculate your property taxes. That's all going to be provided on your notice of appraised value. Most property owners will see that there have been significant increases in the market value of their properties, but we want to make sure that you do not panic. Changes in your property value may affect your tax bill, but they don't necessarily increase or decrease the total amount of taxes that are paid to the taxing units. That is determined by the taxing unit's budgets. And we've got a website, travistaxes.com, that can help you see a breakdown related to your property taxes. Again, that process happens in August and September when the taxing entities start having their budget hearings and start having their tax rate setting hearings. But again, just because your appraised value has gone up does not mean that your taxes are going up. A lot really depends on the budgets and the tax rates that are set by the taxing entities. So that's one of the protections that property owners has. There's also Senate Bill 2 introduced some limitations on how much taxing units can increase their property tax levy. So you've got protections on the revenue side that limit how much growth there is in the amount of taxes that can be collected. But then you also have protections on the appraisal side if you have a homestead exemption, and that's your assessed value, which is a reduced value of your property after a homestead limitation calculation. Now, the homestead limitation calculation is a state mandated calculation, and it is last year's assessed value plus 10% or the current market value, whichever is lower. So that is a state mandated calculation that happens every year. We look at the assessed value from the previous year plus 10%, and then we look at the current market value, and whichever one is lower becomes your assessed value. Then your assessed value minus any exemptions that you're entitled to becomes your taxable value, and that's used to calculate your property taxes. So on your notice of appraised value, you'll see at the very top section that there is a portion that says market value and assessed value. The assessed value is on the right-hand side. And again, if you've got a homestead, you're going to see a significant difference in the market value and the assessed value. So market value is reflective of what the property would sell for. That's based on market data, what properties are selling for. We look at sales that occurred in the previous year. There is no limit in market value. We're required to reflect. That's last year's assessed value plus 10%. Or the current market value, whichever is lower. In most cases, the previous year's plus 10% is going to be the assessed value for property owners. Also on the notice of appraised value, you'll see your taxable value. So you can see any exemptions that you claim and the amount of those exemptions, and then the assessed value minus the exemption becomes your taxable value. There's a lot of confusion about when does my assessed value start and how does that get calculated. So we will do an example for somebody that purchased their home in March of 2020. The assessed limitation gets set the very first January 1st that you own your property and qualify for the homestead exemption. So in this case, the property owner purchased their house in March of 2020. So the first January 1st that they owned and qualified for the exemption was January 1st of 2021. That set their base value for their assessed value. So in 2021, their market value was $376,600. That is their base year. That is their assessed value for 2021. In 2022, the market value went up to $601,027. Last year's assessed value plus 10% was $414,260, and that became the assessed value for 2022. So that's how the assessed value gets calculated on an annual basis. And again, it is a state mandated calculation, and it is done every year. If you want to protest your property value and you disagree with the property's market value that the appraisal district determined, you may file a protest. The deadline to file a protest is May 16th or 30 days after you receive your notice of appraised value. For most property owners, it's May 16th is the deadline to file your protest. We get a question often is, well, how will a protest affect my taxes? When you are protesting to the appraisal district, you are not protesting your property taxes. You are protesting the market value that the appraisal district determined for your property, not your property taxes. Remember, we talked about the budgets and the tax rates that play a part in calculating your overall taxes. So for the appraisal district, you are protesting the market value of your property. And again, that market value is on your notice of appraised value. It's on the left-hand side. So market value is what you're protesting to the property, to the appraisal district. The assessed value is your limitation value, and that is a state mandated calculation. You're not protesting that, you're protesting market value. So even if you successfully protest your market's value, your property's assessed value may not change. And we're going to see that with a lot of property owners this year, given the fact that there's such a great difference between the market value and the assessed value. In this case, the market value is $601,000 and the assessed value is $338,000. So again, the only time that you would affect your taxes or your taxable value would be if the assessed value, the market value turned out to be lower than the assessed calculated value. Most property owners are not going to see that this year just because of the great difference between market and assessed. It is one of the great benefits of the homestead limitation that you have. Again, the assessed value is the only one that is calculated based on last year's value. Oftentimes I hear property owners saying, well, if I reduce the market value this year, it will help me next year. And market value is redetermined every year based on January 1. And that's our appraisal assessment date, is every year as of January 1st. And we're looking at sales that occurred in the previous year. So last year's market value does not play a role in our redetermination of market value this year. We're looking at the sales that occurred in the past year to determine the value as of January 1st of this year. If you want to file a protest, there are multiple ways that you can do it. Online is the fastest and easiest way. You can get immediate confirmation that your protest has been accepted. You can upload and review evidence from the appraisal district. You can accept and decline a settlement offer online. You can also file your protest in person. We've got a drop box in front of our office, or you can do it by mail. But again, online is the fastest and easiest way to file your protest. If you're going to file your protest online, the website is www.traviscad.org/protest. And in order to do that, you are going to need a PIN number, and that PIN number can be found on your notice of appraised value, and it's going to be at the top of the page in red. That's the e-file PIN that you will need in order to file your protest online. If you want to get a copy of the CAD evidence, again, you can file your protest online. It's the fastest and easiest way to get the evidence because we will upload it to the portal and you'll get notification that your evidence is there. You don't have to submit a written request. If you e-file your online protest, then we will automatically upload evidence to you on the portal. If you want to file your protest by paper, then you can request your evidence in writing and it will be mailed to you. It'll be mailed 14 days before the formal hearing. So again, the fastest and easiest way to get access to the CAD evidence is to file your protest online, and we will upload your evidence to the portal, but you can also request it by making a request in writing, and it will be mailed to you 14 days prior to your formal hearing. As we go through the informal, the protest process, one of the first steps is to do an informal meeting with the appraiser. And we will be doing informal meetings from April 18th through June 30th. If you e-file your protest, we will automatically send you electronic offers to settle the protest. But even if we send you an electronic offer without you having done your informal, you still can do an informal. So you can meet with an appraiser even if we send you an electronic offer through the e-file portal. And during your informal meeting, it'll be by phone or video conference, and you'll be able to have a discussion with a TCAD appraiser. Now, they are available on a first come, first served basis, and we've got a link on our website to get in line online. There is one informal meeting per property owner. And if you want to have us review any evidence, please submit it beforehand so that it's available for our appraisers to review that with you. And then after your informal meeting, we will send out offers within 48 business hours if there's any offer to be made to resolve your protest. To get in line online, and again, that's how you can schedule a meeting with the appraiser. You can choose what is most convenient for you. You can schedule an appointment time. So if you use our Get in Line online link on our website, you can pick your own appointment time. People that schedule appointments will get priority, so we will call people with scheduled appointments first, or you can get in line for that same day queue. Now, again, there will be a lot of people and you'll be in line, so there may be a wait if you get in line for the same day queue. And again, if you schedule your appointment, you can pick your date and time, and we will call you and you will get priority on that date. Or if you don't choose to get in line online, we will send you a scheduled letter for your informal time. And if you do not schedule yourself informally, if you e-file online and don't schedule yourself within 3 to 5 days of filing your protest, we will automatically schedule one for you. So we're going to give you some time after you e-file your protest for you to get onto the website and schedule your informal meeting time if you would like, but we will also schedule an informal for you if you don't do it online. When you get in line online, you'll need to provide your name and a phone number. And at your scheduled appointment time, an appraiser will give you a call at the number that you provided. If your phone number accepts text messages, we'll send you a text shortly before the appraiser calls you. That way you can do other things, and we'll let you know a few minutes before the appraiser is due to call you that we'll be sending you a call. So again, that is the most convenient. We found that was the most requested thing that we had for our informal appointments, was the ability to schedule them and then also to get a text so that you could go on about your other daily life business. For an ARB hearing, if you're not able to resolve your protest either by accepting the e-file offer or through an informal with an appraiser, you can still go forward with your protest. You'll go before the Appraisal Review Board. And that's an independent body. They are appointed by the local administrative judge. The ARB members are not TCAD employees. Again, they are appointed by the local administrative judge, and TCAD does not have any influence or oversight over the ARB. They are an independent entity. At the ARB hearing, there will be an ARB panel. It will be a panel of 3 ARB members, and they will listen to the arguments and evidence presented by the property owner and by the appraisal district, and they'll make a decision at the end of the hearing. Property owners will receive a notice of final order via certified mail. And if you are not satisfied with the decision of the ARB panel, you can continue to appeal this. You can appeal the ARB decision to binding arbitration or to district court. So you have many opportunities to continue to pursue your protest. So what can help me lower our property's market value? And the key is going to be the evidence that you submit to the appraisal district. So one of the things, sales price information is one of the things that you can present to the appraisal district. If you purchased your home in the last year for less than the market value price that the appraisal district determined, you can present us with a signed and dated closing statement. Again, we're looking for sales from January 1st forward. because again, our assessment date is January 1st of 2022, and we look at sales that occurred the prior year. Now, please be aware that sales are time adjusted to reflect our January 1 assessment date. But again, one of the things that you can provide us is a copy of your purchase price and your closing statement if you recently purchased your home. Or if you didn't recently purchase your home, you can talk to a local realtor and get sales of comparable homes in your neighborhood. They can give you a sales report that will include the address, the date of the sale, and the sales price amount. When you're looking at comparable properties, make sure that they're comparable to yours in size, the number of stories, the age, the quality of construction, and any amenities such as pools and decks. Again, the TCAD timeframe for sales that we use in our assessment is from January 1st of 2021 through February 28th of 2022. We also encourage property owners to go onto our website and verify the characteristics of your property. Make sure that they're correct. Again, our website will list information about your property. You can go to our website in our property search and pull up your property, and it'll give you the details that the appraisal district has for your property. So you're going to want to look at items such as the square footage. Is there a pool, garage, or fireplace? Maybe you have those or maybe you don't. But we want to make sure that the data on the appraisal district information is accurate. Now, talking about the square footage, when we list the square footage on the appraisal district, you may have gotten one set of square footage from your builder that was based on interior measurements. The appraisal district has to measure all properties from the exterior. We do outside measurements because we're not allowed to go inside your homes. So all properties are measured from the exterior measurements. So there may be a slight difference between the square footage on the appraisal district records and the information that you got from your builder. But again, the plans that your builder gave you should show what your exterior dimensions are as well. And you can verify that those measurements based on the appraisal district's measurements are matching up. You can also present us with as-built construction plans that include your dimensions. Or if you've had a recent fee appraisal done, there should be a fee appraisal sketch included in that fee appraisal. Also, if your property has any substantial damage or very costly repairs, you can present us with copies of photos of the problem, contractor bids for renovation, repairs, or if it's new construction, any new construction that you've had to have done, an engineer's report with a cost to repair, or an insurance settlement report. Again, these are for things that you have that are issues with your home that will represent costly repairs. Not for general maintenance items. You know, all homes will eventually need to get painted. They may need to have their carpet replaced. But if you have substantial costly repair items such as termite damage or mold or foundation issues, those engineers or insurance reports are very helpful for us to make sure that we make appropriate adjustments on your property. Other helpful documents that you can present to the appraisal district could be survey or floodplain information. If it's new construction, then your construction draw information, particularly for the properties that were only partially complete as of January 1st. Again, our assessment date's January 1st, and if the home was only 50% complete, your construction draw information will help us show what percentage complete your home was as of January 1st. A recent fee appraisal that needs to be completed and signed. Or if it's a commercial property, you can provide us a copy of an operating statement and rent roll with a 3-year history. When you submit evidence at your hearing, you can submit it. We encourage you to submit it in advance of your hearing. Again, the online portal is the fastest and easiest way to submit your evidence. That again, will give you immediate confirmation that the evidence has been uploaded. You can also drop it off at the Dropbox at the appraisal district office, or you can send it by mail. But we say if you're sending it by mail, please allow 10 to 15 business days. So you're going to want to send it in plenty of time ahead of your hearing if you're going to send it by mail, because it does take a while for the mail to be received by the appraisal district. Things that you want to avoid. You want to avoid waiting until the deadline. You want to avoid comparing a straight price per square foot. Again, we have to recognize many of the different characteristics between properties. We recognize whether it's a single story, a 2-story, whether it has a pool or it doesn't. So you want to look at the characteristics of your property in the comparable property and not necessarily just a straight price per square foot comparison. And again, arguing about your property taxes or tax increases. The appraisal district can only address the market value of your property. The issues with the property taxes or tax increases is something that needs to be taken up with the taxing entities, and that process starts in August and September. If you have trouble paying for your property taxes, again, one of the biggest things property owners can do to help limit their tax liability is to file for your homestead exemption. Again, the most common exemption is the general residence homestead exemption. And if you own and occupy the property and it's your principal place of residence, you can qualify for a general residence homestead exemption. In addition to the general residence homestead exemption, there's also exemptions for being over age 65, a disabled person, a disabled veterans, or the surviving spouse of a disabled person or a veteran or a person over 65. So there are additional exemptions in place for those categories. You can also request a deferral of your property taxes if you are over 65, disabled, or a veteran. And it is easy to file for your exemption. You file for your exemption at the appraisal district. You can file by mail, by paper, or use our online portal. I want to stress to everybody to please remember to include the required documents. In your application for an exemption, you must include a copy of your driver's license, and it has to be a Texas ID or a Texas driver's license. We can't accept any other form of documentation. And the address on your ID or driver's license must match the address of the property that you're claiming the exemption on. This is one of the most forgotten pieces that people forget to include in their application, and it delays our ability to process the application because we then have to reach out to you and remind you that we need the documentation and wait for that to come into our office. So it can really delay our ability to process applications if you forget to include that required documentation. We are not allowed to grant an exemption without that documentation. So it's really key and really vital for property owners to remember to include that with your application. You do not, if you've recently submitted your homestead exemption, we are still processing. We've gotten a lot of applications. We're still processing those. It may take us up to 60 to 90 days to process applications. You do not need to file a protest to get an exemption processed. Again, if you filed your application, please allow us 60 to 90 days to get that processed. Include your driver's license, but you do not have to file your protest to get an exemption. You can also get involved in the process. Again, we've got a website, travistaxes.com, that will help you get involved in the tax rating side of the process. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But first, we also want to talk to you guys about getting involved in the elections. And there's an upcoming election on May 7th, and Texas voters will have the opportunity to vote on reducing their property taxes. There are two propositions on the ballot. Proposition 1 is to adjust the tax ceiling for property owners who are age 65 or disabled. If you're over 65 or if you're a disabled person, there is an additional exemption that is state mandated for school districts that gives you an additional exemption amount off of your taxes. But in addition to that, it creates a tax ceiling so that in the year that you qualify for your over 65 or disabled person's exemption, your tax rates, your taxes for the school districts can never go above that amount. What happens is as the tax rates get adjusted down, your ceiling does not get adjusted down. So Proposition 1 would allow for those tax ceilings to become adjusted downwards. Proposition 2, for everybody, for the general homestead exemption, would increase the general homestead exemption from $25,000 to $40,000. So again, those are two propositions that will create additional tax savings for property owners. But again, that's a May 7th election that's coming up next week. And again, if you want more information about whether or not you're registered to vote or where your polling place is, you can go to votetravis.com to get more information about the May 7th election. The other way that you can get involved, and again, this starts in August when the taxing units take their first step toward adopting their tax rates. And they will calculate and publish a no new revenue and a voter approval tax rate at that time. And each governing body of the taxing unit will decide whether or not property taxes will increase. If the budgets increase, then a tax rate higher than the no new revenue rate may be adopted. If they propose a tax rate that exceeds the no new revenue rate, then they must publish notice to announce the public hearings. And that is going to be on our website, travistaxes.gov or travistaxes.org. You can also go to texas.gov/property taxes and get to that same information. If they go above a voter approval rate, then there has to be an election that happens, and the election will be November 8th of 2022. So there are limits on how much the taxing entities can go up on the tax rate side. And again, voters get a say in that. You get to participate. Again, travistaxes.com or texas.gov/property taxes. And those websites get updated in August to provide you more information about that. So if you want to know more information about how to file a protest or get the links to how to file your protest online, you can go to our website, www.traviscad.org/protest. On that website, you will find a link to file your protest online, to get in line online. We also have a video about how to go about filing your protest online. You can also go to our website, traviscad.org. All of our webinars are recorded, and so we've done webinars on important information for new homeowners, for homestead exemptions, for understanding your notice of appraised value. And this webinar will also be put on our website. So you can get a lot of additional information from our website. It'll also give you information on how to contact our customer service department. We've got a few minutes left, and I will try to answer as many questions as I can in our chat box. So the first question is, in viewing the value history, what does improvement mean? Does this mean what it would cost to replace the same home on the property? And can I use replacement cost letter from my insurance company as evidence for protesting your taxes? So on your notice of appraised value, improvement does mean your structure, your building is what the improvement means. And so that is the definition of improvement. In terms of your replacement costs from your insurance company, you can submit some of that information, but again, we're looking for the market value of the property, what it would sell for. So the replacement cost from your insurance company would be one part of that. But again, we really are looking for what does the market say the property would sell for. The next question is, will the tax rate change or decrease since property values went up so much in Austin and Travis County? That's a very good question. So yes, as appraised values go up, the tax rates should go down. So the very first step in the tax rate setting process for the taxing entities is to calculate what is called a no new revenue rate. And that is, what is the tax rate this year based on value increases that would get us the exact same amount of tax money as we got last year. It's kind of like a reset button. If the values go up, the rate goes down so that the money that they get stays the same. Any decision that a taxing entity makes to adopt a rate above the no new revenue rate will increase your taxes. And they're required to educate you on that, to state it when they do their adoptions. So again, the very first step that they have to do is a no new revenue rate calculation. And as appraised values go up, that no new revenue rate will go down. The next question is, do we have to submit a timestamp picture for property damage when we protest the property taxes? Yes, we are looking for recent property pictures. Again, our assessment date is January 1st of each year. So you cannot submit a picture of damages that occurred 15 years ago that you have since cured to get a reduction on your taxes for this January. So that, yes, we are looking for recent information. The next question is, my husband put my name on our house last October, and that ended our homestead exemption. We didn't find out until last month and filed it. Will the homestead have a gap between October and when we filed? You know, that is something that we see happening commonly. When a property changes and ownership changes on a property, then we have to remove the exemptions because you don't get to inherit somebody else's exemption in the next year. You get the benefit for the remainder of the year that you purchase it, but the first January 1st, those homesteads get reset based on ownership changes. So we see a lot of people doing things for example, for estate planning purposes. And they may put their home in the name of the trust, or they may add additional owners on their deed, but it's not really an ownership change. From the appraisal district, we don't know what's behind the change in the owner name. So if you are doing something, you're just adding a spouse to your deed, or you're just putting your property in a trust for estate planning purposes, please let the appraisal district know that that's what you've done. We may reset your exemption, but we can reinstate your exemption and reinstate your homestead cap if you let us know that that's what you've done. But it does take communicating with the appraisal district to let us know that that is what has happened. If I protest and lower my market value, does that result in a lower assessed value? And no, again, when you protest, you're protesting only the market value, and it will not result in a lower assessed value unless that market value is less than the calculated assessed value. Again, the homestead limitation is last year's assessed value plus 10%, or the current market value, whichever is lower. So if you protest and get your market value lowered, but it's not lower than your assessed value, then your assessed value remains last year's assessed value plus 10%. Next question, is it necessary to have received and responded to a value recommendation from an online submission prior to scheduling an informal discussion? No, you do not. You can have an informal discussion with the appraiser. Maybe you have a question about the informal offer that was made. So no, you do not have to accept that before you do an online, get in line online and have your discussion with the appraiser. We just offer that as a courtesy and a convenience to property owners. Again, we understand how busy you are, and we want to make the protest process as easy as possible. In order to protest, do we have to have a homestead exemption process, or do we need to wait before protesting? So you can protest, but you're protesting the market value. You do not have to protest to get your exemption process. Again, you can protest and protest the market value of your property, but you do not have to protest to get the exemption process. Again, exemption processing can take some time. It can take us 60 to 90 days to process an exemption. So please give us some time. But if you disagree with the market value, that's a separate issue, and you can protest your market value issues. What happens in a protest if my comparable sales are different than the appraisal boards? Do you take into account the condition of a home, and what evidence do you need? Okay. So yeah, there's possibilities that you may have different sales or more information than the appraisal district may have. The appraisal review board will weigh all of the evidence, both the appraisal districts and the taxpayers' evidence, when they're making a decision. When you come to an informal process and bring additional information to the appraiser, they will take that into consideration as well, along with the evidence and information that we have. Yes, you can protest the condition of your home, but what you'll need to do if you're protesting the condition of your home is you'll need to bring in some evidence that shows that condition. So again, we mentioned before, if you've got mold damage or termite issues, or if you've got foundation issues, you can bring in engineering reports or cost estimates to repair or insurance settlement claims. So those are all kinds of information that you can provide to address condition issues with your home. Do I need to submit my evidence prior to receiving the CAD evidence during the protest process? No, you do not have to submit your evidence prior to receiving the CAD evidence. But what we do ask is, if you want to discuss that evidence with an appraiser, we ask that you submit it in advance so that the appraiser can have it on hand when you guys are having your discussion. But no, you can get the appraisal district evidence beforehand and then submit your evidence later. I filed a homestead exemption last November and it's still in process. I just got the appraised value without the exemption applied. If I protest and the value goes down, will the homestead be applied to the new reduced value? And yes, again, your homestead will be applied to your whatever your current market value is. If you submitted your application in November, please check to see if you've got any communications, either a letter or an email from the appraisal district telling you you need a copy of your documentation. Again, the most common reasons for delays in processing an exemption is because we did not receive the driver's license or the Texas ID. So please double check to make sure that we have everything that we need in order to process that. The next question is, how does obtaining a reduction in market value affect the assessed value? And again, a reduction in the market value will not affect the assessed value unless the market value is less than the calculated assessed value. So reducing market value will not affect the assessed value unless the market value is less than the calculated assessed value. And the calculated assessed value is last year's assessed value plus 10%. If I protest and after the protest, there is a chance that the assessed value can go up than the original assessed value notice, no, the assessed value that you received from the appraisal district is the assessed value. Again, that's a calculation based on last year's assessed value plus 10%. So if you protest, there's no chance that your assessed value will go up. Your assessed value will remain what it is. Can I represent a family member in an informal hearing? Yes, you can represent a family member in an informal meeting. We do request that if you're going to do that, you give us some proof of authorization to represent that family member. So they can give you a letter authorizing you, or if you've got a power of attorney allowing you to represent that property owner, you can. But again, for a family member, if you're going to be representing a family member, we do want to make sure that you have authorization to do that. Question is, what if the house is purchased in April of 2021? Does a closing statement still work as evidence? Yes, you can. Yes, if the house was purchased in April of 2021, that's within the time frame that we generally look at. Again, our time frame that we look at for January 1st of 2022 appraisal assessment date is we're looking at the previous year. So we're looking at sales that occurred in 2021. So yes, your purchase price in April of 2021 would be used as evidence. Again, we have to time adjust that for appreciation that has occurred in the market to make sure that it's reflective of our January 1 assessment date, but you can use that as evidence in your protest hearing. Should square footage only included heated and cooled space, i.e. not garage or sheds? So on our website in property search, you will see that there is a line item for living area, main area, but your garage will be listed separately. And again, we will do measurements of that. Also, any sheds or storage space that you would have, usually sheds are separate buildings, those will be listed separately. So we will measure your house. We will go through and measure your house, and then we will identify how much of that square footage is garage. If it's an attached garage, we'll identify how much of that square footage is garage, and the remainder would be main living area. Do roofs qualify under costly repairs? Yes, if you have specific damage to your roof, if you had, and again, our assessment date's January 1st of each year. So it had to be damage that occurred prior to that assessment date. But if you had damage to your roof on January 1st that needed to be repaired, if you had hail damage or a leak that created problems, yes, you can get some credit for the condition of the roof, particularly if there was a specific event that created that kind of damage. What if the property characteristics on TCAD are inaccurate? Who do you contact to fix it? Okay, so you can file your protest, and during your protest, you can let the appraiser know as you're talking with them if there are any incorrect characteristics on our records. Again, that'll allow us to go through and make corrections. So you can do that through the protest process. Outside of the protest process, there is a link on our website of where you can report updates to the property, and we can make sure that we get those corrected as well. But those are things that get processed after the protest season. So if you want that to impact your market value, I would say file your protest and let that be a discussion that you have with your appraiser when you meet with them informally. What happens if your homestead doesn't get it approved before the protest is due? We will still process your homestead application and apply it to your property. And in fact, property owners who may have forgotten to file their protest can file late homestead exemptions. You can file your homestead exemption up to 2 years late, and we will still grant the exemption, and we will go back those 2 years and apply the exemption and any limitation that you might have. So you can get a refund if you fail to file your exemption. So again, the protest deadline does not prevent us from continuing to process exemption applications and applying them where appropriate. Can I obtain CAD evidence online before I file a protest? No, you cannot obtain the evidence before you file a protest. That evidence includes a lot of market data that is confidential, and we are only allowed to release that confidential information when a protest has been filed. So a protest is the trigger that we have to use in order to be able and authorized to release that information. The next question is, I live in a newly constructed community. All the houses in my community are built by the same builder. May I use a neighbor's appraisal as a comp for my property? So if you are in a home, you can use your neighbor's sales price, but not necessarily your neighbor's appraisal as your comp. So if you're going to submit a fee appraisal as a comp or evidence for your protest, it needs to be a fee appraisal for your property. You cannot submit a fee appraisal for somebody else's property as evidence. But if you do have your neighbor's sales price, then you can submit that as evidence. The next question is, we closed on a house in March and the current owner did file a homestead. So this year it seems we're going to be covered by the 10% cap. Next year will be the base year for our homestead when we file. Does it still make sense to protest the market value of the home this year? Or is it pointless because our market value will reset next year anyways? So if you are a new property owner and you just purchased a home and the home already has a homestead exemption, you will get the benefit of that exemption for the remainder of the year. You get the benefit not only of the exemption amount, but you will also get the benefit of the 10% homestead limitation. So you get that benefit. So filing a protest this year as a new homeowner, again, it will not impact your taxes unless you get it beneath that assessed value. And again, you get the benefit of the previous owner's assessed value because you purchased the home this year. If Proposition 1 and 2 passed, will they be applied to 2022 property taxes? Yes. The propositions on May 7th will be for 2022. So the exemption amount will be increased. It will happen automatically if it is approved by the voters. It will automatically go up to $40,000. There's nothing that property owners need to do to get that increased exemption amount. Once you e-filed for the protest, can you still hire a company to represent you? Yes, you can still hire a third-party company to represent you. You have to give them an appointment of agent form, and they will file that with our office. But yes, you can hire anybody at any time to represent you. Can you explain how TCAD assesses land versus structure? Okay. So when we are doing our appraisals, we're looking at what a property would sell for. We look at what recent properties have sold for. In many areas, if it's new home construction, we know from what the builders are reporting what the land is selling for. But if it is in areas where there's not any new construction and there are no vacant lot sales, then what we do is we look at what are the properties selling for and what do we calculate to be the replacement cost new less depreciation for the building. The remainder of that sales price we know can be attributed to the value of the land, and we use that kind of analysis for determining value of land versus determining the value of the improvement. For the improvements, what we're looking at is we look at what is the square footage of the property. Is it a single story family residential? Is it 2 stories? Is it a townhome? Those all come into play when we're trying to calculate what the replacement cost new is. So we take into consideration all of the characteristics of your property. And again, those characteristics are listed on our website, and you can verify to make sure that we have accurate information on the Appraisal District website. And I think I have time for 1 or maybe 2 more questions. Does a reappraisal for refinance count at the same as a new sale? So yes, we will give the same consideration to a reappraisal that you had done a fee appraisal. Again, it's got to be a recent reappraisal. It's have to be done within the last 180 days, and it has to be signed by a certified appraiser. And one last question. If I protest online and get an offer, if I do not agree and do not accept, does it reflect back on the original one, or do they try again and get me another offer that I agree to? So we will give you an online offer when you e-file your protest. If you meet with an appraiser, you may get another offer from the appraiser based on the evidence that you present to them. If you reject that online offer, then when we go to the appraisal review board, we're going to be talking about what did the notice of appraised value show on your property, and then whatever evidence either side brings forward. So again, if we get an online offer and reject it, you're not going to get an automatic another online offer. You'll either need to do an informal and present additional evidence, or you'll need to do a formal hearing and present additional evidence. And I am out of time for our webinar. I think we've answered almost all of the questions. If you still have questions, again, please go visit our website, www.traviscad.org. Again, we've got a lot of information on the protest process. We have a lot of information on our webinars that you can watch. This webinar will be posted on that one. There's also information for how to contact our customer service department. And you can contact them by phone, by chat. We give a lot of opportunities to reach out to customer service. This is a busy time for us, so please be patient as we deal with very high volume of calls. But again, we will make our best effort to answer everybody's question. Again, thank you very much for attending our webinar today. And please visit our website, www.traviscad.org, for additional information.